Nicholas Montez, and you're watching my YouTube channel, Nicholas Montez. Welcome back to another YouTube channel, everybody. I'm so excited to have y'all back here together again. And in today's video, we're going to be discussing another ranking because today, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness came out in theaters. And I thought it would be time to stop and rank all 28 MCU films from the worst to the best. Let's go ahead and get started ranking all these movies. Now, I know that in my past rankings and reviews that I said that I kind of liked Eternals and I was kind of surprised with it. But as time has went on and, it's gone on Disney Plus, I have just not liked this movie at all. It pretty much it does all the MCU problems it does. But at the same time, it tries to do new stuff, but it just fails at it. It does too many storylines, too many characters, and just not, well, even the villain doesn't save it for me. They try, and the fact that they actually have 10 main characters and not like one specific main character in the film is kind of disappointing. I guess the film still kind of has some enjoyable stuff. The action sequences are really cool. The special effects, and it's probably the most beautiful film in the MCU. And the Gilgamesh and Athena characters I thought were pretty cool. But other than that, this movie is just garbage. Though it's not the worst movie ever made, though. Now, this is a movie that has always been my least favorite in the MCU. And to be clear, it's still, even though it's not a number in last place, it's still at the bottom. And this movie has pretty much all the MCU problems. It's pretty much just forgettable. Because all you can remember is that the villains are the Dark Elves. Thor, it's a sequel to Thor, and Thor's mom dies. That's all you remember from it. There's not really any emotional weight. Malekith is one of the worst villains in the MCU because you don't really understand why he wants the Ether. And even the introduction of the Ether in this film doesn't really do anything. The only thing I liked about it was Loki, the cast, and some action sequences and the special effects. Everything else is just garbage, like I just said. Now, this movie is actually kind of a little bit better. It still has more stuff of what you want from the original Iron Man movie. It has some great action, even though it's not a lot of it. The introduction of Black Widow was pretty good, and I did kind of like the Justin Hammer character. Unfortunately, they just did too many storylines and introducing so much with Stark's daddy issues, the Stark Expo, Whiplash. All this stuff just seems so convoluted, and the fact that I don't blame Jon Favreau. You have to blame the studio because they want to make the Avengers. But I honestly wish that this movie was different, better, and I wish at least Jon Favreau could have made like an extended version of this, or like the Favreau cut, or something like that. So, yeah, this movie comes at the bottom. Now, this is a movie that I just could not get into. Of course, the cast is pretty good. The special effects, the look of Asgard is great. The action sequences are great. Some of the characters are pretty cool. Problem here is that the story itself was just so weird. It starts off with the World War of Asgardians and Frost Giants. Then it leads into Thor getting sent to Earth, and then Loki takes over Asgard, but then he wants to destroy the Frost Giants. And then, even when you get to the third act, you don't feel any emotional bandage because Thor's gonna win in the third act. So it's like there's no emotional weight to it. So it's easily at the bottom for me. Now, while this movie has a couple of problems, the movie still has some really good stuff in it. First off, I thought what this film did nail that perfectly is giving characters fantastic moments. Especially what they did with Yondu. I thought Yondu was the best character of the film, where every moment he was just nailing it. from the character arc he had with Star-Lord, as well as these sequences, whether it's him killing all the Ravagers, and even Rocket and Baby Groot getting on the action. That was great. The soundtrack is still great. Baby Groot is adorable, and the humor is still. I think this is probably one of the more funnier films in the MCU. However, when it gets to the story, it feels too long, but then it feels so short. Like, it's so confusing in the way it manipulates you in a way. So, and then Ego just seems so despicable as he kills off his children, and I just never really liked that plotline, so it was just so weird. Now, this is a movie that has a lot of great stuff with the action, the character moments, the storylines, the character arcs. All that really works. The story itself is a little bit weird because you go into the film and Ultron is introduced, and if I'm being honest, Ultron doesn't make any sense. I don't understand the Ultron character. I get it. I mean, I loved him in What If. You don't really need to understand him. You just need to see how dangerous he is and how much of a threat he was to the multiverse. But with this movie, Ultron isn't interesting. He wants peace, but in order to do that, he wants to destroy the world. That's not really that's not the most interesting storyline to come up with. Likewise, besides that, I also love the introduction of Scarlet Witch, Quicksilver, and Vision. Quicksilver easily gets killed off, but I did kind of like him. Vision and Scarlet Witch are the great characters of this movie, especially Scarlet Witch, especially with her journey through Civil War, Infinity War, Endgame, WandaVision, and then into the Multiverse of Madness. So, she's had an amazing character arc, but overall, just a enjoyable film, but not great. Now, this was a movie that I thought was really cool, telling the story of Iron Man after the Avengers. Him dealing with PTSD after basically going through a portal and seeing aliens, gods and space aliens out there. That's a lot for a man to take in, and I thought the way they explored that was really cool. Beyond that, the action is really cool. I thought the way they actually did some of the action sequences, like with he uses like ornaments as like bombs. I thought that was really cool, especially like it's kind of like a Christmas movie, which technically Hawkeye is technically more of the Christmas project in the MCU. So I thought Hawkeye was much better than Iron Man 3. The interactions that he has with the kid are great. All the little moments with Pepper and stuff, especially in the third act, where she like basically defeats. She's basically the hero of the film, where she basically defeats Ultra Killian. In the third act, you get all the Iron Man suits that Tony has been working on, and it's like the big payoff of everything Tony has been working on for years and years to come since he became Iron Man. And so I thought it paid off with some really cool stuff for the Iron Man trilogy. But when it came to the actual story of the villains, it just felt so weird, and I never really liked Ultra Killian as a whole. His storyline never made sense. His army just seemed better for action sequences rather than actual story. So, yeah. While it does not make sense for the rest of the MCU with Iron Man, with Age of Ultron and Infinity War and Homecoming, I thought it was a good film. Now I know what you're thinking. Why? This is usually a top tier MCU film. Why do you have this at number 21? Well, to be clear with this, I do like this movie. There's just a couple of things that I never really liked about it. First off, the action, probably some of the best in the entire MCU, and it's not just because it's martial arts. It's well choreographed. All of it is just amazingly well choreographed. And it just reminded me a lot like Rush Hour and Kung Fu Panda, which are my favorite movies of this type of genre. But I also love the way they did the story of the characters, where Shang-Chi has been running from his past for 15 years, and his past is finally catching up to him. And for me, I love that story. But then I also love the story of the sister where because when the mom died, she trained the brother, but she didn't want, she just has to sit and watch the boys train. So she trained herself. She watched the boys and she watched what the boys did and trained herself to do it better. And then she went on her own when she was 16 and basically did her own thing and basically started her own fight club when she was 16 in Tokyo. And it's like if she won't let her fight with the boys, she's gonna create her own empire. And that's awesome. And the way it pays off in that end credit scene was amazing. And then beyond that, the villain is also really good, as he's not a villain. I mean, obviously he starts out with this generic villain plotline where he just wants power, but it's not just that. He transforms into the villain where he does evil things for love. And that's actually really cool. And when he fights the sun at the end, it's kind of satisfying, it's personal, and I do like that. I kind of wish we could have got more of that. And then likewise, all the other side characters like Trevor returning and Aquafina's characters, they're all good. They're all nice characters. They're all nice additions. But the thing that really bugs me down with this film is when you introduce dragons in the world of Talo. Now, the world of Talo is beautiful, and I guess you could say I did kind of like the inclusion of dragons, but because I keep saying like Rush Hour and Kung Fu Panda are my favorite films of this genre, I wish that the movie would have just stuck with martial arts action. I don't feel like it needed to go big world cosmic with dragons and mystical creatures, because that's not really what Chinese is. I mean, I know it technically is, but at the same time, I still kind of like it. Would I want to see that and happen in real life? No, I don't know. I'm mixed on it, but that's why it brings it down for me. I wanted it to be big action, but at the same time, not. I don't know. I'm mixed on it for some reason. Now, this is a movie that when I first saw it, I was like, this is actually really good. And then a couple times after that, I was like, this isn't really that good. But then I rewatched it again, and I'm like, why is everybody hating on this movie? This movie is actually pretty good. It takes like all this cool stuff that I feel like I've heard about before, not technically, and it takes all the familiar beats, and they like try to explore Captain Marvel's past, and like Maria Rambeau. I like the way they actually go to other characters to explore stuff, and the way that Carol's origin story in the film is, I actually kind of like Captain Marvel, because in her film in Endgame, I just never liked her character. I liked her in action sequences, but whenever it came to her actual characterization, it was just so weird. But at the same time, I actually liked the way they did her character, where everybody lied to her. I guess you could say the issues with the film is that the movie feels like it has the same problems that it was trying to do in Phase 1. And plus, the villains aren't really that great. I guess you could say the great villain of the movie is Jan Rog, Jude Law's character, which I thought was amazing. The special effects are pretty cartoonish at times, but they are still pretty good. And they do kind of continue that in Endgame and into the Multiverse of Madness, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But overall, I did like the film. Now, this is a movie that I always had at like the top of my B tier films, and this is really where the B tier list starts. And I kind of thought about it, and I'm like, I don't think I like this movie as much as I usually do. And this movie is not a great Spider-Man film. It's enjoyable. There's a lot of entertainment going on. There's certainly a lot of great action sequences. When it comes to the actual story of Spider-Man, I don't think it works. Now, granted, on the Spider-Man positives, I think the way they actually develop Peter and MJ's relationship well, actually, yeah, a relationship, I thought was really good. And the way that they actually continued that in No Way Home, I thought was great. There's a lot of funny moments. It's probably one of the funniest MCU films besides like Thor Ragnarok, maybe. It also just has some really cool action sequences, whether it's the third act where Spider-Man is fighting all these drones, or even the stuff with Mysterio, which Mysterio is also a great villain. But the thing that bogs it down is that there's just a lot of scenes in here that just feel so unnecessary. Like the plotline about the Edith glasses is just so weird, because why would Tony Stark plan to give high-tech glasses for all this high-tech security to save the universe to a 17-year-old kid? That doesn't make any sense in any sense possible. Likewise, why would you give it to Mysterio? And personally, what is exactly is Mysterio's plan in all this? Because like, what happens? What is he gonna do when an actual threat arrives? If all this is fake, like what exactly? Like, is he just gonna die, or is he gonna like disappear like Doctor Strange did when he didn't see this? Like what's going on? So that stuff was weird. The only I did like the ending, the way it said it in No Way Home, and then I did like that other end credit scene where it's setting up Secret Invasion, which I am excited for that show. So that's pretty much everything I have to say about No Way Far From Home. Now this is a movie that I thought I know a lot of people don't like, but I actually like it. First off, the Hulk action is just incredible. Everything about it is just amazing. And I like the way, as this is another one of those MCU films that is short on action, unlike Iron Man 2, where it just has 3 main action sequences, and also Iron Man. This movie works with action. It has one in the nighttime where it's kind of like a horror film. You have one in the daytime where it's pure daylight. You can see everything, and it's big explosions. And the third act is pretty much 2 gigantic monsters fighting each other, and it's awesome. It looks great. But beyond that, I think I like Edward Norton as Bruce Banner. I did like Abomination, though he was more of a villain that was basically for a challenge, not really like a characterization. I liked William Hurt as Thunderbolt Ross. R.I.P. to him, because I really wish we could have. Maybe they'll film him as hopefully they filmed him as Red Hulk in this series, in She-Hulk. Who knows? We're probably not getting that, although they'll probably recast him, but that was a special role. Betty Ross was pretty good, even though people say that she was like a mom or anything. What else? I also liked the Mr. Blue guy, who technically is set up to be the leader, but we don't really know where he's going to go in the future. Hopefully he comes back in She-Hulk, like Abomination is doing. And so overall, while it is pretty forgettable, it is still kind of a good part of the MCU that I thought was good to watch. And for me, I thought this was a pretty good follow-up to Infinity War, where it wasn't trying to be the biggest film in the MCU. It was just trying to be a good movie to have some laughs and to have some fun. And that's what you got. You got some cool action in introducing the Wasp. You got some... Now at the same time, you did still get those MCUisms of having a cool villain. I did like Ghost, where she's not trying to hurt anybody. Granted, people trained her to be an assassin, but in reality, she's not trying to hurt anybody. She's just trying to heal her so she won't die herself, so she won't die. That's really all it is. She's not trying to hurt anybody. She's just trying to heal herself. But she knows that she's done bad stuff in the past. And the fact that Ant-Man and the Wasp are trying to stop her is just kind of weird at the same time. You still want to save Janet. You get Michelle Pfeiffer's character in here. And you also get some more funny scenes. I probably should be lowering it more, but I honestly really enjoyed this film, so I really enjoyed the film. Now, this is a movie that I was actually really excited for, as this was like the first MCU film since Far From Home, and seeing an MCU film after like 2 years, I thought was really good. Of course, the action, like all these other movies, are great. Yelena is a great character introduced in here. Red Guardian was very funny. Melina was pretty cool. The villains, however, were probably the worst part of the film. Taskmaster was underutilized. He was done poorly. Dreykov was not really good. The CGI was basically bad. And I did kind of like the generic story of it, so that's kind of like another thing I liked about the movie. So overall, I did like it, so that's my thoughts on Black Widow. Now, this is a movie that I think has some really cool stuff. Of course, I love the origin story of Steve Rogers, where he's just a guy that doesn't care if he's small or not. He still wants to serve his country and fight for it, no matter what it takes. And I just love that theme about the film. And I love Steve Rogers as a character. Beyond that, the other characters get in here. Peggy Carter is a great character. Bucky is a great supporting character. The whole cast in here is great. The score from Alvin Silvestri is great. The action is really cool. The special effects are pretty cool. Red Skull is a cool villain. The movie overall is just a really good war movie. And the emotions at the end is pretty cool. And the way it kind of sets up him being in the Avengers was cool. So I actually did really like the movie. Alright, so finally we're talking about the newest film in the MCU, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, and personally, I did like this movie. Personally, I just thought the way that they actually took Sam Raimi and put some of the Sam Raimi isms in the MCU into this film of taking horror, but also weird stuff, and putting into this film, I thought was really well done and really clever. But at the same time, they also dive deep into Strange and into Wanda, where they pay off all the stuff that they wanted for the WandaVision fans, but then they also give Strange a character arc where Strange is dangerous because he is arrogant, because he makes the toughest decisions possible to save everyone, and that's what makes him such a great character, is that he is dangerous and he can't be trusted. So I guess I love that. America Chavez was a great introduction. The little Illuminati characters were pretty fun. I was kind of disappointed that we didn't get much of these cameos that we were expecting. But at the same time, some of the cameos were kind of wasted, as they basically all got killed by Scarlet Witch. Sometimes but other than that, this movie is really good, and I actually want to go back and rewatch it again. Now, this is a movie that, when I first saw it, I was like, don't know how I feel about this. And then I was like, this is really good. It introduced me to a world of the MCU that I loved. It also introduced me to a character that I loved. And it also just had some of the best visual effects in the entire MCU. Where you had all these bed-minding worlds and all this world that reminded me a lot like Inception. Well, actually, when I watched Inception, it reminded me a lot like Doctor Strange. So, yeah. So I actually really like this movie. The villains are trash, but overall, I did like this movie. And there also are some really cool action sequences. Now, this is a movie that I had to rewatch it again to actually really like it. And I rewatched it and I was like, this is really clever in the way Marvel can do things. Where they told a story that kind of mixed in humor, but also mixed in some seriousness, and made a very fun but likable story, and made it clever at times. and like, dude, like the action is really clever and well done, and like it creates a new hero in the MCU. And I thought it worked really nicely. The whole cast is great with Paul Rudd, Michael Douglas, Hope Evangeline Lilly. Yellow Jacket is fine. The movie does feel similar to Iron Man, but I don't really care about that. I just thought it was really good. Now, this is a movie that, when I first heard that they were going to be making a solo Spider-Man film in the MCU after Civil War, I was like, yes, please, because I love Spider-Man. He's my favorite Marvel character, if you could see in the background. And for the film we got, I thought it was really great. The villain of Vulture is absolutely amazing. He's one of the best MCU villains of all time. He's threatening, especially the way Michael Keaton plays him. It's also very funny. It's also a really cool story. And while I'm not the biggest fan of Spider-Man using Stark Tech for his first solo movie in the MCU, I still thought it was really good. So, yeah. That's what I loved about Homecoming. Okay, so we entered the top 10 with Black Panther. And Black Panther, I think, is a really good movie where ever since Civil War, we've always wanted to see more of this character and explore more of him. And we didn't really get much of that, but even though we got a lot of Killmonger, it was still really good. And what we got was amazing. The world of Wakanda is beautiful. Everything pretty much about this movie is just really good. The action can be a little bit weird at times, and I just thought it told a really compelling story. Now for me, this is a movie that I thought was really well told for the MCU, as it basically is a spy thriller. Something that I don't think the MCU would ever do. And they actually nailed it. And they do all these cool action sequences, especially the way they kind of reinvented Captain America and basically making him a spy. And I love that. Along those same lines, it probably has some of the best action sequences. Like, besides Shang-Chi, it has some of the best hand choreographed fights in the entire MCU. And it's absolutely astounding of the way they did this. Beyond that, the introduction of Falcon in the MCU was really good, or at least the new Captain America. Winter Soldier is a threatening villain, as well as Alexander Pierce, and so overall the movie itself is just absolutely great. Now, when I first saw this movie, I was like, I don't know if I like this movie because the action just does not seem that cool. But then I watched it and then I had to rewatch it and I was like, yeah, this is a great movie. It just introduces you to all these characters, and really Star-Lord is really the heart and soul of what makes this movie, or what makes all these movies great. I hope they continue that in Guardians 3, because I love Star-Lord, as they really focus the story on him, with his mom and his love for music, for 80s music. But at the same time, you could still have all the other characters do things like Rocket and Groot. They're great. Gamora, you don't get much of her, but I still loved her character in her introduction. Drax was very funny, and he was just really funny in this film. And by the same time, the soundtrack is amazing. One of the best soundtracks in the last 10 years. The Hooked on a Feeling is really the song that I think of whenever I think of this movie. So overall, I just absolutely love Guardians of the Galaxy. Alright, now for me, this is probably one of the funniest MCU films where they really just reinvented the entire Thor series and made it fun. And they all do that in the opening sequence where Thor is captured by Surtur and he breaks free and he just starts beating the crap out of all these fire soldiers with Led Zeppelin playing in the background. And it just turns into this whole fun thing where it has cool action, it has likable characters, but fun. But at the same time, you could still have the seriousness of Hela basically killing everybody in the room and proving her to be a powerhouse. And I love that. It is kind of weirdly resembled when she kills the Warriors 3 and all that. The introduction of Valkyrie and Korg and Meek were all great. Having Hulk in this movie was really cool. And then Loki gets some awesome moments. And you can definitely say this is the better Guardians of the Galaxy film. But overall, I absolutely loved Thor Ragnarok. The first film in the MCU to start it all off, I thought this was a great movie. And what makes the movie so great is the character of Tony Stark. He just nails it at everything he's doing. He's just likable, but at the same time, he's also going on a character arc where he shouldn't be alive unless it's for a reason, and it continues throughout the entire MCU. But along those same lines, he just has great chemistry with everyone he's around. And that's what makes the film, this is the heart and soul of the film. But even then, the soundtrack, the special effects, the humor, all of it really works. The action even, as it is one of the first MCU films, it is a little bit, grounded, so I can appreciate that, but overall, it's just a great film to introduce to this franchise. Now, if you know, this was my most anticipated film of the MCU since Avengers Endgame, and no question here, it easily is one of the best MCU films, but also one of the best Spider-Man movies as well. The way that... What I personally loved about this movie is that, because one of the things I was really hoping from this film to give us, is to give us a great story for Spider-Man, because if you could do a great Spider-Man story with Miles Morales, and that worked with Multiverse, you could do a great story with Multiverse with this film. And they absolutely nail it, and they do the beats of with great power comes great responsibility, and doing all of that with Peter Parker, and I thought it was absolutely fantastic, and it just creates this whole new world for Peter Parker, for Spider-Man in the MCU, that I just think is amazing in the way they did this. But at the same time, the fan service for all the live-action Spider-Man movie fans is just incredible. I mean, seeing the villains come back are amazing. Doc Ock, Green Goblin, Electro, Lizard, Sandman, all of it is great. But then you get, of course, Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield coming back. It's all great. The ending, pretty brutal. The action sequences, especially when Aunt May dies. Green Goblin is the heart and soul of the film. Overall, well, not the heart and soul of the film, the darkness in the film. But overall, I just absolutely love this movie, and it just does everything I absolutely want for a Spider-Man film. Now, this is a movie that I had to rewatch to actually kind of love it. And to be honest with you, I absolutely love it now, and this is one of my favorite MCU films. Now, I will say this, as much as of how much Avengers films have come out in the past years, it makes it seem kind of weird of why everybody was going crazy for only 6 heroes assembling for the first time. When you had, Fantastic Four and X-Men coming together, why are you making such a big deal about about 6 different heroes teaming up to save New York City from aliens? It just seems kind of weird. But it stands out because all the characters' interactions are amazing. But then you go into that third act and it's just fan service moments of all the characters you've seen throughout all these films. All the action is cool. It looks very realistic. Loki, I will say this is probably the weakest part of the film because, when he's villainous, he's kind of weak. And I don't really like him like that. So overall, I love this movie, and it's just absolutely rewatchable. Now, this is something that I've actually noticed with this movie, in that it has a problem. It fixed a problem that Age of Ultron did. And basically, Age of Ultron tried to do so many stories. It tried to do a big story, have so many stories, and set up so many stories. This movie has a big story, sets up a lot of stories, and has a lot of stories in the film. And I love that. As it is an Avengers movie, it's also a Captain America film, as it continues the stuff of the Captain America series, but it's also focusing on the Avengers with the Sokovia Accords, and basically like seeing how all these heroes are seeing the Sokovia Accords in different ways, and like the perspectives of Tony Stark and Steve Rogers, both sides are wrong in certain ways and both sides are right in certain ways. And I thought that was great. And then of course like even has some like comic booky fan service action when you get into the airport sequence where you have all the Avengers, both sides of Avengers of Iron Man and Captain America, battling it out together. You get some awesome moments, comedy, action, all that, and even some little moments in other scenes where, in like the apartment sequence where they're fighting the soldiers. All that is great. And even like the third act is personal, as you have all these characters that where the fight is personal. It's not about fighting the villain. It's about fighting. It's about the fight that's personal. And also that's what makes Zemo. That's what makes Baron Zemo a great villain. Beyond that, it also introduces Black Panther and Spider-Man in the MCU, which I thought was great. So, R.I.P. to Chadwick Boseman. I forgot to say that with Black Panther. Please forgive me. R.I.P. Chadwick Boseman. This film is amazing. The culmination to almost 11 years of the entire MCU is absolutely one of the best films in the entire MCU, and I just absolutely loved it. At first, I could never get on board with the time travel stuff, but because with the multiverse and the way everything has turned out in the MCU, as to this point in time, I actually really dug it, and I thought it was great. But at the same time, I mean, the way it pays off all the characters of doing the time travel stuff. I mean, Thor seeing his mom again, Tony interacting with his dad and making up for it. All the fan service moments with Captain America just standing there, going to face off Thanos' army, even wielding Thor's hammer at one point, and then we get all the heroes coming back through all the portals, and it's just one of the big hero moments, like the Guardians of the Galaxy, Spider-Man, Drax, yeah, like Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, yeah, Falcon flies through, yeah, and then he says Avengers assemble, all armies go to war, and I'm like, it's just, yeah. Even to this day, I still feel very excited for what has come to this movie. So like, fan service moment, and then the death of Tony Stark is absolutely satisfying. What they did with Thor, going off with Guardians of the Galaxy, can't wait to see what they do with Thor: Love and Thunder. And then Steve gives Sam the shield and goes to his other universe to live his days with Peggy Carter. I just absolutely love that. So this is a satisfying conclusion to the Infinity Saga. The Thor stuff I didn't really like. Everything else, really great. Now this is my favorite movie of all time. I'm serious about this when I say this. This is my favorite movie of all time. Where I was so excited for this movie, and it absolutely paid off. Where I only saw 2 spoilers with this movie. With Endgame, I saw like multiple spoilers. I saw the third act. I saw Captain America wielding that shield. I saw the Captain America versus Captain America fight. I saw tons of spoilers. Then with Infinity War, I've only seen the Hulk versus Thanos fight and the scene where Thor arrives in Wakanda. That's it. Everything else was new to me, and I saw fresh. And I'm glad I did that, because this movie had the best movie theater experience. It really made everything great about the MCU. It did stuff in a way that was emotional and satisfying, but describing how it is. All the characters get fantastic moments, cheerful moments. Thor arriving in Wakanda is great. The action is great. All the characters get great moments once again. But the big thing that puts the film on top here is the villain of Thanos. He's just great. While his plan is immersive and catastrophic, he has reasons for it. And he'll do anything in his... Even in the Vormir sequence where he kills Gamora to get the Soul Stone, he'll do anything in his way to get it. And then he wins in the end, and he kills half of all life in the universe. And you get that satisfaction of the villain actually won. And it's catastrophic. And you felt sad. And they even killed off Spider-Man, which is probably the most emotional death of all of these. And the way they did that was absolutely amazing. And they did that well done. Amazing. So this movie comes in at number 1. Alright, this has been a long video enough. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. All my social media stuff is in the about section over there. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.